Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, Builders, Shills, Dust, Slicers, Peasants, Vassals, Minions. I'm a useful idiot. Welcome. And this morning we're going to talk about Ukraine again. And it turns out I ended up doing a commentary through this whole event. And well, I should, because as I pointed out since the beginning, this is a very, very important geopolitical event, a true giant event in our time, and it's fascinating to watch it unfold. And I'll pick up where I left off last time, which is where we ostensibly had a revolution, but the results of what has been unleashed now would be both unpredictable and predictable, and we're seeing exactly that. So now we're having the clashes between those who support the Russians in Ukraine, and then those who support the Ukraine gravitating towards the West. And this was inevitable, and it's stretching out all across the country now. The most dramatic one, of course, being Crimea, where the parliament was stormed, and paramilitary forces surrounded airports there, and the Russian flag was raised, and there was a lot of clashes between both sides there as well. And the United States has already recognized the new Kiev government, and a delegation's been sent. That's only serving to antagonize things at this point. And then we have the gigantic military Russian drills, 150,000 troops just on the other side of the Ukrainian border. And indeed, this is sending a message. And that's what statesmen and politicians do. They send messages, and this is one way of doing it. The United States has certainly done it dozens of times over the last 40 or 50 years, sending loud messages with these drills. In fact, the United States right at this moment has military drills with South Korea, which is very provocative to North Korea. And so it goes. And then we have the Golden Eagle riot police disbanded, and that's an interesting move, because they will no longer be a factor in this revolution, but I assume a lot of their hardware will now be going to militias in Ukraine. And then we have the claims that Yanukovich squirreled away something to the order of $70 billion out of the country in secret accounts. And that really should come as no surprise either. That's another thing that oligarchs and elites do all over the world, especially in countries that receive a lot of gratitude from both Russia and the United States. And so yeah, he probably does have $70 billion squirreled away overseas. And it's also funny to see that Yanukovych fled right away and had lots of excuses other than the fact that he was simply afraid for his life. And he continues to claim that he is the president of Ukraine, which is quite laughable. Yanukovych is only in charge of jack shit, and Jack just left town. And so now we also have Crimea calling for referendums about whether to reject this new Ukraine and rejoin Russia. And that would be a natural move, because the Crimea has only been part of the Ukraine since 1954, when Russia essentially ceded it to Ukraine and put it under their jurisdiction. So that wasn't that long ago, and the population of Crimea is particularly pro-Russian. And we also know that the Black Sea Fleet is there at Sevastopol, and so that's very important to Russia. And so they're not going to let it go. And in a lot of ways, it's a legitimate claim. And the events we have now of the talk that Russia has sent troops into Crimea is a relative point. The fact is that Russia already has 27,000 troops in Crimea, so they don't really need to move anybody into the Crimea to take it over. And they justify, Russia justifies sending their military there to protect their citizens and their pro-Russian citizenry in Crimea and their interests. And that is also legitimate, because we've seen the United States go into numerous countries around the globe, as I pointed out before, for the same reasons, to protect American citizens and American interests. So that's legitimate as well. And so in some respects, we're seeing the Western media play this up as if Russia are the bad guys, when in a lot of ways it almost looks like Russia is playing the role the United States used to play, and the United States is the evil empire this time, and because the United States fomented revolution there, is now threatening Russia for intervening in its own neighborhood and rattling their swords. And also the Ukraine has a lot to gain by making outrageous claims in order to get the United States and the West to fully support the new government in Kiev. So it's in their interest to use a lot of scare tactics, including right now talking about mobilizing their forces. And I'm not trying to downplay the fact that a military confrontation could happen between the Ukraine and Russia. I'm just suggesting that all this saber rattling and posturing is just part of the game. So it's too early to get too alarmed. And so I would proffer and put forth the idea that we now have a revolution in Crimea, and albeit there is a foreign, so-called foreign Russian troops there, the fact is that the Russian troops are already there. They're in the middle of it. They are protecting a new government claiming its freedom and its revolution in Crimea, and will hold a referendum much the same way that Kiev will hold new elections in several months from now. So I'm going to characterize this Crimean situation as the Crimean Revolution, and not necessarily a Russian intervention. And then the layer of comedy that goes on top of this, with all the leaders posturing and threatening and going through all the geopolitical motions. I know all the people who constantly worry about World War III are probably really enjoying this and are in a froth right now. But I'm a little more pragmatic. I think these are just the standard geopolitical events unfolding, and that everyone is positioning themselves for further negotiations. And that's my take on it. So anyway, I guess there'll be further updates on the Ukraine as things unfold there. Like I say, this is one of the big geopolitical events of our time, as the Ukraine moves towards the West in their revolution in Kiev. Now we have one section of Ukraine, the Crimea, wanting to hold a referendum and claiming they are going to be part of Russia, a semi-legitimate claim. And what we need to watch for now is to see whether any kind of Russian interventions happen anywhere else in the pro-Russian areas of the Ukraine. And I'll put some attachments below that go into a lot of these details in more depth, including a map about how complicated it would be to split the Ukraine, although there's some natural lines that make it a fairly clean operation as far as the pro-Western west part of the Ukraine, and then the pro-Eastern or pro-Russian eastern and southern part of Ukraine. But as one would guess, there's enclaves of both within each of the other regions, and that is where the complexity lies. So we'll see how this plays out, but pretty interesting to see what is lining up as a potential standoff between Russian troops and Ukrainian troops. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.